So it gives me great pleasure to return to Portland. And I've been on a round the world trip, leaving Thailand towards the end of March, going to a monastery in Italy and England, Switzerland, New Hampshire, and then came from Washington, D.C. for the first time. I'd never been to Washington, D.C., and then Portland, Oregon. From here we go to Vaigiri and then to Japan, back to Thailand. But there's so much. And people ask me, about traveling around the world with all these different cultures, different traditions and so forth. I say, I only meet Buddhists. Going to Italy, I meet Buddhists. I didn't meet any Catholics. So to me, the whole world is Buddhist. And I've been interested in Buddhism for over 60 years now. And been a monk. This will be my 51st year at Range Retreat this year. And what I've done, I've taken an interest in the simple teaching, not in the more complicated forms of Buddhism. And so, the first year I was a Samanera, I had a book on the Four Noble Truths, and called The Word of the Buddha. It was a collection of the important teachings of Buddha from the scriptures, from the suttas, compiled by a German monk years ago I never knew, Yadati Loka. And it was all about the Four Noble Truths. And this teaching is, has been my main reflection and interest over the past 50 years. And this was the first sermon of the Buddha after his enlightenment. It's an interesting teaching because most religions start from a more theistic style, from the theism where you affirm your belief in God or some higher entity. And the Buddha's first sermon after enlightenment was pointing to the most common experience any human being ever has in life, that we can all relate to is suffering. And so this is, this was quite interesting to me because I couldn't really relate to theistic teachings very well because they demanded belief. You have to believe in that, or either you do or you don't, or you're never quite sure. But suffering is something that I could relate to. It's ordinary. It doesn't matter of who suffers the most. We all suffer, whether you're rich or poor, male or female, or king or queen or beggar. And so, just taking something so common and ordinary to all humanity and putting that into the category of a noble truth. Very interesting. What is so noble? It is true that there is suffering. But why call it noble? I used to consider it a nasty fact of life. And, why did God create suffering? If He created everything, why did He create suffering? Was one of my childish questions. And, of course, when the Buddha was enlightened, and according to the scripture in Bodhgaya, his first thought after enlightenment was, how can you teach this to anyone? Because Dhamma, ultimate reality, reality itself, has no language. You can't describe it. You can't. It has no qualities or size or perspective. So how can you teach something, with language, through concept, through perceptions and so forth, and that is beyond that. And so this is an important reflection. But Dhamma has no quality, it's not a perception, it's not a thing. It's what we translated best as reality itself. So one of my slogans these days is describing Buddhism as the summation is awaken to reality. It's an invitation to wake up to reality or realize Dhamma. And so, according to the scriptures, the Brahma god, Brahma Sampati, the sky god, came to the Buddha and said, there are those with only a little dust in their eyes. Go forth and teach for those special people. So you're the special people at this moment. And so the Buddha finds his 5 colleagues who deserted him before he was enlightened, when he was a really strict ascetic, and he found that they were, through his psychic powers in Sarnath, near Varanasi. So he went there, and of course his first sermon, his first reflection to them on that occasion was the Four Noble Truths. And this is called the first sermon of the Buddha, the Patomatesana, the first teaching of the Buddha after enlightenment. And over the past 50 years, just using this teaching for a reminder, for investigation, he realized how profound it is. There's four truths, but as an end in themselves, it's easy to remember them. So there is suffering, there is the origin of suffering, there is the end of suffering, there's a path of non-suffering. But taking this word suffering and making it a noble truth is that what's noble about it is that those of us who change from just running away from suffering, who blame our suffering on others or external conditions, or keep looking for happiness blindly, there's nothing noble in that. And in the first noble truth, the important reflection is to understand suffering. To understand suffering, you have to look at it. You have to accept it for what it is. If you're always just blaming it on the weather or on external conditions, on other people, or just suppressing it, looking for happiness, that's just reaction to suffering. Nobody wants to suffer, we all want to get away from it. That's the conditioned reaction that we have. But to understand suffering means to look at it in a different way than just seeing it and just reacting to it, trying to find happiness or get away from it, suppress it. So in monastic life, when I met Luang Chah in 1967, I had this insight. The first year of the Sumedho, I reflected a lot on this book, the Word of the Buddha and the Four Noble Truths. And when you're alone, like the first year as a Sumedho, I was alone most of that time. I lived in a kuti in a meditation monastery in northeast Thailand. And I only took this one book. It was like a pamphlet. It was not like any great tome. And I didn't take anything else. And I wasn't going to read anything. There was no radio, no television, no telephone. It was very basic, kind of wooden kuti in a kind of scrubby forest. And it wasn't really one of these splendid forests that you have here in Oregon. It was just a scrubby forest. And there, of course, the first 3 months were just learning to live alone. Because when you do that, you have nobody to talk to. I couldn't speak the language, and at the monastery, nobody could speak English. So there I was, all on my own. They bring me a meal once a day, once in the morning, and that was it. So the first 3 months, all the repressed anger and resentment I was 30 years old came into consciousness. No matter how hard and how determined I was to suppress it, because I learned a meditation technique in which I was, I'd been practicing this as a layman in Bangkok, in which I was trying to use it to suppress my emotions, trying to hold them back and get tranquil. The whole aim was to find peace and tranquility in the forest. And instead I just found enormous amounts of anger, resentment, hatred coming to the surface. And I kept thinking, is this the right path I'm on? I came here for peace and love and unity and compassion, and here I am just hating everybody. So I had to give up trying to do anything with it and just kind of sustain patient endurance with these very negative states until they disappeared, and they did. And one morning I woke up, I think about 3 months after I first entered this retreat, and the mind was absolutely pure. It was like luminous and bright, and everything was beautiful. The scrubby forest was beautiful. The kuti was palatial, and everything. And I kept thinking, where am I? And then I thought, I'll try to think of negative thoughts and memories that really make me angry, and they couldn't take hold of anything in me. And so, of course, I was lacking in wisdom. I didn't really understand what had happened. But I thought, I'm enlightened. This is pretty good. An American comes 3 months to get enlightened. It's a typical American conceit. But it lasted for about a week, and then I had to renew my visa. To go to the immigration, and there I lost it. The luminosity, the beauty suddenly collapsed, and I was back in with resentment and so forth. But it was a powerful experience, and after that I felt the need to take higher ordination as a bhikkhu, and because I knew I needed training of some sort, I needed a teacher. I thought I quite like living on my own, and maybe this luminous citta, this great, wonderful, pure state will return forever, was what I hoped. But something in me knew that it wouldn't be that easy, because there was this desire for remembering this wonderful experience and trying to get it again. Before, I had no previous knowledge of this kind of reality. So I had no memory, I had no image of it. It happened spontaneously through the letting go of suffering. But I didn't really understand what I was doing. And so I started, the rest of the year, I pursued these Four Noble Truths, suffering, because the desire to have that state again, to have that beauty and radiance was so strong, trying to get it back, and no matter how hard I tried, it wouldn't come back. And all I could do was relate to the first noble truth: there is suffering. But taking this kind of ordinary human condition and investigating it. You're changing from being an ordinary reactive human being, ignorant human being, to what they call an Arya Pudala, into one who's looking at suffering, using suffering. It's an Aryan state when we change from just the reactive running away, blaming, to looking at suffering. So we start observing or wanting something we don't have, and wanting to get this wonderful state back again was a desire through memory. You had the memory of it, had previous experience, and the reality of that after that crash. The reality was it was a memory that created desire, and so then there was a desire to get rid of things I didn't like, mental states, the defilements, the kilesas, the greed, hatred, and delusion, wanting to get rid of things that I didn't want. There was the general sensory desires through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. Just the Gama Danha, they call that Gama Danha through the senses, then Bhava Danha, desire for becoming, getting something you don't have, and Vittava Danha, desire to get rid of what you have that you don't like. And that's the second noble truth. The origin of suffering is this ignorance of Dhamma in which desire arises, and we grasp it. We either sensual desire, or desire for becoming, or desire for getting rid of something. So this is the second noble truth, is the examination of desire. And recognize that this is a desire realm that we're experiencing. In English, the word desire always has kind of pejorative meaning, like when you say somebody has a lot of desires, it's not something complimentary. But in the Pali sense of desire, the word danha, or translated generally as desire, is this realm where it's the nature of the body, of the senses. It's natural to have desires. And so we start looking at desire rather than trying. At first, the attitude was to get rid of desire, to annihilate desire, and that's one of the forms of desire to get rid of something. You get nowhere with that. It's a catch-22 problem, and so you just by trying to suppress, get rid of it, you end up with becoming an obsession. But to look at desire, and because of these three categories, I found them extremely helpful, putting desire in a perspective for reflection. And when I use this word reflection, this is what I mean by, this is the point of the Buddhist teaching. What mindfulness really is about is observing, noticing, investigating the way it is. It's not analyzing, it's not analytical, but it's observing. And what is it? Then you ask yourself, what is it that observes desire? If there is desire, there's the sensory desire, there's desire for becoming, desire for getting rid of. Can desire know desire? Or what is it that can observe desire? And of course this is what we mean by mindfulness. Mindfulness is the way that we can observe desire, and in this sense, mindfulness is not just mindful of an object, that we're mindful all the time when we're crossing the street, driving a car, doing whatever. We have to be aware of where we're at and what's happening around us. But in the sense that mindfulness has taken on a whole new importance in the Western world. And so, like here, in the European countries, wherever I go, they ask me about mindfulness. And mindfulness is the word of this age, being mindful. What is it? And when I first started this reflection, I gave the Pali, I said Dhamma tassa 3 times, and then I chanted Aparuta Desangama tassa Tawara, which is when the Buddha was enlightened. He said, the gate to the deathless, this is important, the gate or the entrance to the deathless is open. And for those that hear this, please release your faith or trust in this. Now what is right now, when we're sitting here, what is the gate to the deathless? What is the deathless? Because, we know we're going to die, and you can imagine life. No, we're not sure what happens when you die, but we have beliefs. We have, because we're all living, we're all conscious living beings at this moment, and we have different beliefs like, when you're dead, it's oblivion, nothing left. And so then there's you either go to heaven or hell according to how good or bad you've been, or you get reincarnated into some other life in another form, like reincarnation. You can become a frog in the next life, or an angel. But the reality of this moment, at least in my mind, is I don't know, because I haven't died yet. I'm getting closer. When you're this old, death is not far away. But the gate to the deathless, you can't imagine the deathless. But the gate, then, the only possible reality of the gate, or the escape hatch to the deathless, is sati sampajanya, or mindfulness and intuitive awareness. And mindfulness is embracing the moment. It's not focused on an object, where you have to shut everything out. Like some forms of concentration is that if you concentrate on one object, you have to ignore all the rest. So if you're concentrating on a candle flame, you have to shut out all the things surrounding conditions that you're in, and just concentrate on one object. But clear comprehension, or sampajanya, is the ability to open ourselves to the present moment. Wide, I use this gesture as a wide kind of gesture of opening to the present, like listening, like being aware, not seeking any particular object, but just this sense of a kind of poised attentiveness to the present moment is sati sampajanya, which includes everything. I don't have to shut anything out or ignore anything. So this kind of mindfulness is now, people are beginning to realize how healing it is, how important it is, because it has been ignored, especially in the Western world, which is good at the thinking process, at the form world, at investigating through science, through thinking, through analysis, through theories and all kinds of other mental abilities we've developed to a high level, but not sati sampajanya. And so over the past 60 years, when I first became interested in Buddhism, this was 1955. It was in Zen Buddhism, as it was being transferred over from Japan to the West Coast. What appealed to me was, I couldn't explain it, but it's something in me kind of intuitive that this was something worth investigating, something worth developing. And at that time, hardly anyone else was interested in it. When I tried to talk about meditation or Buddhism to anyone else, they thought I was crazy. So they thought I was, a really peculiar person. So you decide you better shut up and just be a quiet Buddhist. And now, of course, you see, I've seen the development of Buddhism in the West, which is remarkable in the Western, in Europe, in America, and places like Australia and New Zealand. Why? Why this time is there this sudden interest in sati sampajanya, in mindfulness, intuitive awareness? Because it is, it's what we really need to develop. We've developed the material world to a high level, the mental world, but not the wisdom, because this is where wisdom can manifest through consciousness, is through sati sampajanya, mindfulness, and clear comprehension, intuitive awareness. So being aware of desire, you ask yourself, what is it that's aware of desire? Of course, this you're using Dhamma vichaya, or investigation. Investigating suffering, investigating desire, not analyzing, why do I have these desires? It's not about why anymore, it's like this, desire for sense pleasure, sexual desire, or what we see or hear, smell, taste, touch, is like this. So it's a kind of accepting desire and observing it, not grasping it. So see the suffering that we create by grasping blindly, ignorantly, out of not understanding Dhamma. We grasp desires out of habit. We create a sense of a separate self as our reality. And that separate self then we have emotions, we have feelings, because we're in this sensory realm. We identify with our perceptions, with our conditioning, with our bodies. And all this is a form of grasping, which we grasp, and then we suffer from this grasping. So the second noble truth is about letting go of desire, which is not destruction of desire, it's not annihilation. It's just like grasping is like this tight fist, letting go is relaxing. So this letting go of desire, you have to know what desire is to let go of it. And that's why I encourage, in give retreats, so I encourage people to investigate desire, not try to get rid of them. In meditation groups, the desire to get samadhi, to get concentration, to get states, high states, to achieve tranquility, to achieve peace and universal love. All kind of noble desires. In this sense, desire isn't necessarily bad. It can be very high-minded. Desire to cure all suffering, desire to help all of humanity is about ultimate altruism. But it's still desire, it's human-made. And so when we begin to see that this ignorant grasping of desire is the cause of suffering, that we have the insight into letting go. So it's not annihilation, as I've said before. We're not trying to get rid of desire, but no longer be a slave to it, just be blinded by our desires. So when you develop this sense of letting go of desire, then what the result is, you see the end of desire. Desire arises and ceases. And your relationship to desire is knowing desire rather than becoming the desires that you're experiencing. So what is it that knows the desires? Is consciousness. This is another word that is very significant at this time, where people don't really know what consciousness is. That, you know, in the West, you're brought up to think of it as in the body. So you have, it's in your brain, and we think when you die, consciousness leaves the body, and where does it go? You know, and is it a personal? Is consciousness personal? Is it my consciousness? But in scriptures, consciousness is one of the immeasurables, and it has no boundary. And it's non-personal. So what is that in terms of meditation here and now? Is that we're awakening to the pure conscious reality that we all have at this very moment. But we're not aware of it. We don't recognize it because of this ignorance and attachment to desire. So the third noble truth is when you let go and you realize consciousness knows itself. So then at this time, we're all sitting here thinking of ourselves as separate. We're monks, bhikkhus, lay people, and you all have individual names and memories and views about yourself, ideas about yourself. But where we are united this is just a reflection, it's not doctrine. Just trying to stimulate sati sampajanya in you. Reflective Dhamma, this investigating the way things are, is consciousness. It's unitive. It's not my consciousness and your consciousness. That doesn't exist. There's consciousness. And then the conditions arise and cease. The seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, emotions, feelings, whatever, arises and ceases in consciousness. Because with sati sampajanya, when there's mindfulness, the gate to the deathless, consciousness doesn't have a beginning or end. It is immeasurable. It has no boundary. You can't. If we're all conscious, separate forms in consciousness at this moment, they're all conscious. So what is it? And you can't describe it. Try to figure it out, what consciousness is, because you are conscious. It's like this. And so it's not personal, because to make it personal, I have to claim it as, I have a higher consciousness or something like that. It makes some statement, which I'm not going to do. I mean, that wasn't meant to be a statement of what I am. But pointing to the reality of consciousness is what we're all experiencing at this moment, every one of us. And it's impersonal. It's not male or female. It's not European or American or Asian. But we're all experiencing it at this time. And this is what sati sampajanya allows us when we're mindful. And we let go of these three desires, through wisdom, through insight, then what remains is the third noble truth, the nirodha satya, or the end of conditioned phenomena. It arises, it ceases. It's not an annihilation of conditions, but you're noticing the way it is. That suffering, the first noble truth, whatever way you're experiencing that, if you're accepting that, allowing it to be what it is, then you'll notice that it is impermanent, it's anicca. It is what it is in the present. You're patient, you're allowing it to be that way. And then you'll notice it ceases. And there's still consciousness, awareness, when the condition ceases. So this is when consciousness knows itself, realizes itself, which leads to the fourth noble truth, which is based on right understandings, samadhi. So this is where samadhi, or right, perfect understanding, is perfect understanding then at this time. Because you know through insight, through direct insight, these noble truths. And the result of investigating them. So the insight into the fourth noble truth is meditation, really, cultivating this awareness, trusting it. So it's in Theravada Buddhism, people get confused with consciousness because it's in the five khandhas. There's the Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. Vijnana is considered an impermanent, and it is not self. But the consciousness through the senses is impermanent. Like when the eye sees an object, the consciousness of that object arises, the perception arises. That's impermanent. But when there's non-attachment, then there's still consciousness. So it doesn't have a form, doesn't have a quality other than discerning reality from delusion. So this is what enlightenment is about. It's discerning, being able to know the difference. Delusion is this way, and ultimate reality, Dhamma, is this. And this, in the Thai forest tradition, one of the things I found very helpful when I went to live with Luang Chah was, I had this insight already into, there was still this doubt about what is it that knows desire? Is it, because there's still a sense of a subject knowing something. What is that? And of course, it seems like you claim it, like it must be me, I'm the one that's doing this. So, but then, through it, in Luang Chah, one of his teachings was to develop this mantra called Bhutto, which is a Buddhist name actually. And they use it in usually the Thai forest Ajahns use this mantra a lot, is it Bhutto, which is the knowing, because consciousness is knowing, and Buddha is knowing. It's awakened consciousness. So you've just taken the three refuges this evening in the beginning. You say, Bhutang Saranam Gacchami. What does that mean? What is a refuge in Buddha? Is it some kind of sage 2,500 years ago in India? Or some kind of mystical Buddha quality in nature, or what are we taking refuge in? What is a refuge anyway? Is a safe place to be, and that's mindfulness, and that's awakened consciousness. So you're internalizing Bhutang Saranam Gacchami into something that isn't just a traditional form or a chant, Pali chant, or part of Theravada tradition, but it's actually what I call internalizing, making it work for you so it's practical and helpful rather than just ceremonial. And the Buddha knows the Dhamma. So through this awakened, conscious awareness, there's knowing reality, Dhamma. And Sangha, Sangham Saranam Gacchami, is those practicing, cultivating, Supatipano, right practicing, right understanding. So, and that's us. That's if we're practicing with these Four Noble Truths in this right way, with Sati Sampajanya, that's right practice. That's bhavana. Like Luang Chah is very much the same. You don't really meditate till you see the path, with right understanding, samadhi. The important thing is that so much of mindfulness is about, dealing with chronic pain or personal problems, as it's used in so many, in modern terms, popular forms of mindfulness practices, which is, I don't mean to insult or put it down, but ultimately, it's not about getting your ego straightened out or dealing with the physical world in the way that you can bear it. It's a perfect understanding of reality, the deathless reality, Dhamma. So I found that, when you reflect on consciousness as unitive, universal, then it connects everything. Nature, animal world, sun, moon, and stars. It's all inclusive. And it's deathless, meaning it's not a condition formed that has a beginning and an end. So in meditation practice, as you cultivate this, as you realize this path, then your practice is one of making it very clear, because you still have the momentum of your karmic habits. So you still have these different memories, different attitudes, different assumptions, cultural conditioning. The thinking process itself is conditioned. You're not born thinking in any language whatsoever. But newborn baby is conscious in the human form. And then it learns, the sense of it. You are a boy or a girl, you are a baby, you are this age, you're a good boy, good girl, a bad boy, bad girl, you're an American, or you're a Thai, or whatever. This is acquired knowledge after birth. And so we identify very strongly with the human form we have, because from the time we're born, our mothers and fathers and those around us keep reaffirming the sense of you are this limited form in this physical body. And then your cultural conditioning takes place. your social identities, what class you belong to, what race you belong to, all are acquired knowledge after birth. But consciousness itself has no quality. It's not but it includes, all these identities are what they are. But our relationship to them changes from grasping these identities to non-grasping them, not grasping them. So I've found over the years of meditation practice, this way of non-grasping. You still have emotions and memories and tendencies, and so but they arise and they cease. You constant reminder not to grasp, not to identify with them anymore. So one time, one monk asked Chah, we all considered him an enlightened master. So monk asked him, you're this great meditation master, do you still get angry? And he said, yes, but he doesn't grasp it. And so this is, realize that this realm we're in is actually, it's about sensitivity. You can create an ideal world with your head, with your brain. An ideal world where everything is fair and just and democratic and equal and no rich or poor, where everything is the best. You can create that with your thinking process. Because the thinking process can do that. But the thinking process doesn't feel anything. It's not sensitive. So you can create a heavenly realm or an ideal, a perfect man or perfect woman, a perfect government. That's what we want here in the United States, a perfect government. And that shouldn't be the way it is. So this is idealism. And so you're aware of this idealism is, it's beautiful to have these ideals, but ideals don't feel right. All you can do is complain about how unfair, unjust, and how it should be something that's not. Where in Sati Sampajanya, mindfulness, intuitive awareness, you're aware it's like this. So even if blame for something you haven't done or physical diseases come or loss of loved ones and so forth, the experiences of life that every human has to deal with, we feel them. But we also, we can still feel grief and that, but we know it. We're aware of it as a condition arising and ceasing. And we're not coming, no longer, we still have ideals, but we no longer grasp them. They're more like guiding stars, they're high up. And they give a direction. Like becoming a Buddhist monk is basically an ideal at first. It gives you a direction. You think of this ideal monk, Buddhist monk. But none of us are ideal Buddhist monks, except maybe Ajahn Sudanto. But we are the way we are. And this is learning to not compare oneself with an ideal of perfection, but learning to relate to what you're feeling in the present, even if it's not very good. It's like this. It is impermanent, it's anicca, it's dukkha, it's suffering, it's anatta, it's not self. So I think I have time for questions and answers. Or? So you can ask questions. I don't know if you'll get any answers.